What if I told you that you could get all the health benefits of a 2.5 hour walk in just 1 minute? I know it sounds way too good to be true, right? That's the exact claim that's been blowing up online, and today we're going to get to the bottom of it. So let's just dive right in. Take a look at this number, 156. I'm just going to let that sit there for a second. This single number has been the talk of the entire fitness world, but what does it actually mean? It's the number of minutes of light activity. We're talking about something like a long walk that a recent study says could be replaced by, and you're not going to believe this, just one single minute of vigorous exercise. And for what? For a similar drop in cancer mortality risk. Wild, right? So naturally, this has been framed as the ultimate fitness hack, a way to trade hours of your time for mere minutes and still get the exact same results. But is it really that simple? Can you really do that? That's the big question we're tackling today. All right, so where in the world did this unbelievable claim even come from? Let's get past the headlines and look at the actual data. The source is this 2025 paper from Biswas and his team. What they did was they analyzed data from over 73,000 people, and this is key. They used wrist-worn devices to track their actual movement for a week, not just what people said they did. Then they followed up on their health for about 8 years. That's a pretty solid starting point for sure. This is what they found. The study came up with these things they call equivalency ratios. So if you look at the row for, say, all-cause mortality, they found that 1 minute of vigorous activity was linked to the same risk reduction as about 53 minutes of light activity for type 2 diabetes. It jumps to 94 minutes, and there it is for cancer mortality. That's our headline, grabbing 156 minutes. On the surface, this looks like a slam dunk for high intensity. So, should we all just cancel our walks and start sprinting for 1 minute a day? Yeah, maybe not. Not so fast. This is exactly where the popular headline grabbing interpretation really starts to fall apart. We've got to peel back the layers of this study like an onion to really see what's going on underneath the surface. So, a really sharp analysis by Dr. Peter Attia pointed out three huge limitations that we absolutely need to get our heads around. Number one, the data is just a brief snapshot in time. Two, this is all based on statistical models, not what happens when you actually replace one activity with another. And three, and honestly, this is the big one, the devices are measuring movement, not actual effort your body is putting in. So let's break each of these down. Okay, so the first problem is the time frame. They only measure people's activity for about a week, but then they look at that 1 week and projected those habits forward for 8 years. Just think about your own life for a second. Do you work out the same way you did 8 years ago or even last year? Of course not. People's habits change, their fitness levels evolve, they get injured. Using a 1 week snapshot as the foundation for these huge long-term conclusions is, well, pretty shaky. Next up, the stats. The study used a fancy technique called mutual adjustments. Now, all that really means is it's a way for the computer model to ask a very specific question. What's the effect of the vigorous exercise after we've accounted for all the other activities someone does? But here's the catch. There is a statistical trick to isolate one variable. It's not a simulation of a real person deciding to ditch your 2 hour walk for a 1 minute sprint. The model is just showing a statistical link, an association. It's not giving you a green light to make that substitution in your own workout plan. All right, now we're getting to the absolute core of it. This is the most important layer of that onion we talked about earlier. This is the main reason why those headline numbers are so misleading. And it all comes down to the huge difference between movement and real world effort. So here's the whole problem in a nutshell. That watch on your wrist, it measures acceleration, basically how much and how fast your arm is moving. But what your body experiences is physiological load, how hard that movement actually is for you. Think about it. A device might see two hikes as identical because, hey, the arm swing is about the same. But your body definitely knows that one of those hikes was on a scorching hot day with a 50-pound pad on your back, and the other was just a casual stroll in the park. Peter Attia just nails it with this analogy. He says, imagine an untrained individual and a marathon runner doing the same hike. From the device's perspective, these may look similar, but from the body's perspective, they are not. And that's so true. For the untrained person, that could be a max effort, a grueling workout. For the marathon runner, it's basically an easy recovery day. So what this all boils down to is that the study's entire categories of light, moderate, and vigorous are defined by the device, not by your body's actual physiology. The exact same activity could be moderate for a pro athlete, but completely vigorous for someone who's just starting out on their health journey. This creates a massive margin of error, and it means those upper precise ratios we saw, they're basically built on a foundation of sand. Okay, so we've totally dismantled this idea that you can just swap hours of walking for a minute of sprinting. So what now? What's a smarter way to think about all this? It's time to move away from these tempting, easy formulas and toward building a real solid foundation. Here's the real takeaway. The thing you need to remember, all the different intensities of movement matter. They all have value, but they are absolutely 100% not interchangeable. Each one has its own unique and vital job to do. The best way to think about it is like a pyramid. Way down at the bottom, you've got all your light activity, just moving around during the day. But the real foundation, the wide, stable base of that whole pyramid is your moderate activity. You might have heard this called zone 2 training, where you're working hard enough that you're breathing heavier, but you can still hold a conversation. This is what builds your aerobic engine. And then way at the top, that sharp little peak, that's your vigorous zone 5 activity. That's what pushes your absolute limits. But here's the key. You can't build a high peak without a massive base underneath to support it. It isn't just checking a box for 1 minute to say you did it. The whole point is to expand your capacity so you can handle more hard work more often, and the only way to build that capacity is on that strong, wide foundation of lower to moderate intensity volume. It's durability and steady progression that drives real long-term results, not some magic formula you read in a headline. What's the real bottom line here that I want you to take away? Look at this study. Look, this study was designed to spot broad patterns across tens of thousands of people. It's a population level observation. It was never meant to be a personalized prescription for your individual training plan. And treating it like some kind of simple time conversion formula is just a huge mistake. And that brings me to my final thought I want to leave you with as you think about your own health, your own fitness. Just ask yourself this one question. Is your training actually building a durable long-term foundation, or are you just chasing the latest tempting formula? Because the answer to that question could change everything for you. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I have a favor to ask of you. The best way that you can help me out is to subscribe to this channel, to like and share this video, and if you want more content like this, then check out this video right here that I did.